Today we're going to unravel a subject that unfortunately is quite prevalent in the daily lives of many: manipulation. This form of negative social influence reveals how individuals or organizations use subtle tactics to gain control and advantage over others. Manipulation can occur in various spheres of life, whether in the workplace, personal relationships, or even large social groups. Thus, understanding and reflecting on these tactics is not just a way to safeguard one's autonomy, but also to promote healthier and more transparent relationships. It is essential to learn to defend oneself, and for that, we will explore the most intense manipulation tactics. Know that all knowledge is neutral as it depends on the user to give it a function. Therefore, remember that these tactics are dark, and the purpose of this content is for you to learn to protect yourself from them, not to use them against others. This knowledge is like a tool that can be used both to create a magnificent work or to commit evil. Therefore, all the knowledge you absorb in this video should be used responsibly, whether for your self-defense or personal development. We'll understand how manipulation silently infiltrates our lives, often without us realizing it. We'll demystify these techniques not just to recognize them, but also to equip ourselves with the necessary tools to fight them. In the end, I guarantee you will be more prepared to face the world with a more critical eye and a more alert mind. Here is the darkest thing about the WS of manipulation. Before we start, please leave your like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot and costs you nothing. Let's get started. Number 1. Triangulation. This is a subtle but powerful manipulation tactic that involves introducing a third person into a relationship dynamic to create division, tension, or confusion. The manipulator uses this third person as a tool to exercise control, destabilize the existing relationship, or divert attention from their own questionable actions. In triangulation, the manipulator may play one against the other, sharing distorted or confidential information between the parties, or using the third person to validate their own opinions and feelings, discrediting the other party. This can lead the victims to doubt their own perceptions and feelings, isolating them and making them more dependent on the manipulator. For example, in a family context, a parent might speak ill of one child to another, creating an alliance with the second and leaving the first isolated and insecure. In the workplace, a boss might share negative information about one employee with another, generating rivalry and distrust between them. Triangulation is particularly destructive because it corrupts trust and direct communication between the parties involved, allowing the manipulator to maintain control and avoid responsibility for conflicts or misunderstandings. Victims of this tactic often find themselves in a cycle of misunderstandings and conflicts without fully understanding the origin or the role of the manipulator in these problems. Countering triangulation requires recognizing the tactic, open and honest communication between the parties being manipulated, and a strong sense of personal boundaries. It is crucial to question the validity of the information received, seek clarifications directly with the other parties involved, and refuse to participate in conversations or actions that foster division or distrust. Number 2. Double bind. This is a situation of psychological manipulation in which the person is placed between two contradictory choices or conflicting messages, so that regardless of the decision made, they will be wrong or at a disadvantage. This tactic is often used to confuse and control the victim, making them feel powerless, confused, and anxious as there is no correct or satisfactory way out in these situations. The manipulator may communicate mutually exclusive expectations or demands. For example, a parent may criticize a child for not being open and communicative, but when the child tries to express their feelings, they are reprimanded for being disrespectful or overly sensitive. Here, the child is put in a double bind because if they open up, they are punished, and if they remain silent, they are also criticized. The double bind can also occur in relationships where one person may tell their partner they want more independence, but at the same time becomes upset or distant when the partner spends time alone. The victim of this manipulation becomes confused and insecure about how to act, as all their actions seem to result in a negative response. This type of manipulation is particularly insidious because it attacks the person's ability to trust their own perception and judgment. This can lead to a state of constant self-doubt and decreased self-esteem, making the person more dependent on the manipulator. To deal with a double-bind, it is important to recognize that the situation is a manipulation trap and not a reflection of one's own incompetence or failure. Seeking support from trusted friends, counselors, or therapists can help the victim validate their own perceptions and feelings. Additionally, setting clear boundaries and communicating assertively are crucial steps to protect oneself against this type of manipulation. Number 3. Projection. Projection is a manipulation tactic where the manipulator attributes their own flaws, feelings, or inappropriate intentions to the victim. This occurs when the manipulator is unable or unwilling to acknowledge their own shortcomings or negative behaviors and instead projects them onto the other person, making them feel guilty or in doubt about their own actions or feelings. This defense mechanism distorts the victim's reality, leading them to question their own perceptions and to feel responsible for problems or feelings that actually belong to the manipulator. For example, a jealous partner may accuse the other of being unfaithful or flirting when in reality, it is the accuser who is having these thoughts or behaviors. Projection allows the manipulator to divert attention from their own flaws and transfer responsibility to the victim, often making them feel defensive, confused, or guilty without cause. This can weaken the victim's self-esteem and increase their emotional dependence on the manipulator. Confronting projection requires the victim to maintain a strong sense of their own reality and boundaries. It is important for the person to recognize when they are being targeted by this tactic and not to internalize the unfounded accusations. Keeping a record of their own thoughts and feelings, seeking feedback from trustworthy third parties, and practicing self-affirmation are useful strategies for combating manipulation by projection. Additionally, it is essential for the victim to learn to emotionally distance themselves from the manipulator and to establish clear boundaries, refusing to accept responsibility for problems or feelings that are not theirs. In extreme cases, it may be necessary to cut ties or seek professional support to deal with the consequences of this form of manipulation. Number 4. Time pressure. This is a manipulation tactic used to force the victim to make quick decisions, creating a false sense of urgency. The manipulator claims that action must be taken immediately to avoid negative consequences or that a unique opportunity is about to expire. This method exploits the fear of loss and anxiety, reducing the time the victim has to think, research, or consult other opinions. For example, this strategy is often used in high-pressure sales, where the seller insists that an offer is for a limited time or that only a few items remain. However, it can also be found in personal and professional relationships, such as when someone demands an immediate response to a significant request or imposes an unrealistic deadline for an important decision. Under time pressure, the manipulated individual may end up making hasty decisions, often to their own detriment and to the benefit of the manipulator. The artificial urgency prevents the victim from evaluating all options, consulting third parties, or simply listening to their own intuition. To combat this tactic, it is essential to recognize when someone is trying to manipulate time to influence your decision. It is important to ask for time to think, not to succumb to the pressure to act immediately, and to remember that few decisions genuinely require an instant response. Additionally, one should be aware that time pressure is a red flag for manipulation, and that often by waiting, additional information may emerge that will help make a more informed and balanced decision. Number 5. Inconsistency and unpredictability. Inconsistency and unpredictability is a manipulation tactic where the manipulator acts erratically and unpredictably, causing confusion and insecurity in the victim. This behavior can range from extremes, such as being loving and attentive one moment and cold or disdainful the next for no apparent reason. This pattern of behavior keeps the victim in a constant state of disorientation and anxiety, as they cannot predict or understand the actions of the manipulator. This tactic is often used in abusive relationships, where the abuser alternates between kindness and cruelty to create an emotionally unstable environment. The victim, trying to understand the manipulator's behavior and yearning for approval or love, may find themselves trapped in a cycle of trying to please the manipulator, never achieving stability or satisfaction. Unpredictability is effective because it capitalizes on the human desire for consistency and stability. When a person's actions do not follow a logical or predictable pattern, it becomes difficult for others to adapt or respond appropriately, which can lead to a state of emotional and psychological dependence on the manipulator, who appears to be the only source of solution or relief. To deal with inconsistency and unpredictability, it is important for the victim to recognize the manipulator's pattern of behavior and understand that it is not their responsibility to constantly correct or adapt to please the other. It is vital to establish clear boundaries and maintain emotional distance from the manipulator. Additionally, seeking support from friends, family, or professionals can provide the perspective and support needed to deal with this form of manipulation and rebuild self-esteem and independence. Number 6. Emotional blackmail. Emotional blackmail is a manipulation tactic where the manipulator exploits another person's emotions to get what they want. This usually involves creating a sense of obligation, fear, guilt, or shame in the target, leading them to act against their own interests or values to satisfy the manipulator's demands. At the core of emotional blackmail is the abuse of the emotional bond between the parties. The manipulator may suggest directly or indirectly that their well-being, happiness, or love depends on the victim's action, creating a situation where the victim feels responsible for the emotional state of the manipulator. Common examples of emotional blackmail include phrases like, if you really loved me, you would do this for me, if you leave me, I don't know what I'll do, or don't you care about our relationship. These statements are designed to make the victim feel guilty or obligated to comply with the manipulator's demands. Emotional blackmail is particularly effective because it taps into deep-seated fears of rejection, abandonment, or failure in relationships. The victim often feels trapped, as refusing the manipulator's demands can lead to conflict, withdrawal of affection, or other negative consequences. To counter emotional blackmail, it is essential for the victim to recognize the manipulator's tactics and understand that they are not responsible for the manipulator's emotions or actions. It is crucial to establish and maintain personal boundaries, communicate assertively, and not allow oneself to be swayed by guilt or fear tactics. Seeking support from trusted friends, family, or a therapist can also be helpful in gaining perspective and strength to resist emotional blackmail. Ultimately, emotional blackmail undermines the foundation of trust and mutual respect in relationships, and addressing it is vital for the victim's emotional well-being and autonomy. And now, if you have made it this far, you can comment with the word JARMOR, so that I know you watched the entire video and are now more prepared to face manipulation and have a good week.